All right. So we had several topics carry over from the last meeting. I don't see Isaac today, so he proposed to talk about application controller tests. And since he is not here, I think we can move to the next topic. And if he joins late, then we can, talk about it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. And next one is so the feature request and the PR from Peter. I think Peter can go ahead, please.
Hey guys,
Hello.
I'm Peter from Banzai Cloud, and I just wanted to promote this PR because I believe it would help in certain cases. Let me share my screen.
Let me stop sharing. Okay.
Okay, so here's the PR, and I would like to give you some context on it. When we faced this, we wanted to upgrade a Helm chart and some custom resources with it. And what happened is that validation failed. And it turns out it failed because the CR in that sync used a new field that wasn't available in the existing CRD, but it was available in the CRD in the same sync, just not yet applied to the server. So I was relatively new to Argo CD, so I tried to figure out how we should handle this issue. I thought that there could be some workaround, but I haven't found any. So I tried pre-sync and putting the CR into post-sync or using sync waves, but everything seemed to happen just after validation. So validation precedes everything, and I couldn't even solve this reliably or elegantly using or putting CRDs and CRs in different applications. So we discussed this internally, and we had an idea that we could make this work using the CRD in that same sync if it's available, and trying to validate the CR against that local CRD locally instead of trying to validate it against the API server. And this PR is a proof of concept on that idea. So to demonstrate this, I have an Argo CD installation running locally. I applied the default Argo CD resources, but I scaled down the application controller so that I can start my own from a repository that has the GitOps engine set to a local path where I applied these changes. So I have these changes now running locally on my machine. And I just created this application, which is in a public repository. So I have 3 revisions. In the first revision, I have a Helm chart application, which uses our logging operator as a dependency, and it creates a flow with certain fields. this should should just sync successfully, but in the next change, I introduce I use a new version of the logging operator, and I use a new field in my custom resource. So I have this application synced. Now if I try to upgrade to this new version, then I should see a failure that says local output refs is not available. So it's an unknown field, which is true because it's not yet applied to the API server. And the change supposed to fix that by adding an annotation to this CR instead of disabling validation, which is possible right now, but we don't want to skip validation. So we can turn on this feature using this annotation and applying this change should work, hopefully. So the point here is that with changes in CRDs and even when we want to migrate resources over to new API versions, we will face issues like this. But yeah, so it's now synced. But using this local validation, we can fix this or work around this without disabling validations at all. I tried to not just give a patch, but to write some tests for this. So the test cases are checking for valid and invalid CRs. And again, this can be enabled using a feature flag, so it shouldn't hurt existing functionality. Well, I think that's all, and thanks for letting me introduce this, and I'm looking forward to having this once. I don't know in which release it can get into, but any feedback is welcome.
Yes, and thank you for explaining the use case, because I think that that was the hardest part to understand. Why is it necessary? Now, after you explained it, it is really clear. I think it's really valid use case, and I think we had kind of very similar problem when you're introducing CRD for the first time, and then and that's why, like, my first immediate feedback is that, do we even need that flag? Why don't we just do it by default? Because I think, so basically, just to kind of give a context, I feel like we're trying to add new annotations very carefully because that number keep growing. So, and then we had internally discussion between, how to, what is the best way to solve the problem when, for example, you want to create CRD and CRs in the same sync operation, or if you have a namespace and resources that's supposed to be created in that namespace. And then we were discussing kind of if we want to introduce any kind of flags. And basically we decided that that all looks like edge case, and it's really easy to detect it in code. Imagine if you have a CR and CRD, you could simply, in the code, we can say, oh, CRD must be created first. It seems to me the same kind of use case. So we could say, yes, we have CR and CRD. So we're going to change CRD, and we should just fall back to local validation without any additional, flags. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, I also think that this should be the default, but it's well, it's a bit experimental since it's not
Mm-hmm.
really a thing that kubectl does. For example, it also validates against the API server.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't have that CRD available. Also, it's different because clients, so validation against the API server means validating against an open API v2 document. But in this case, I believe there is no conversion, so we use a different validation. So we use the validation libraries that the API server does internally. So, so this validation is a bit different, and I'm also not sure whether this type of validation checks against unknown fields because that is only checked on the client side. So it may introduce some issues or it may introduce different behavior than or how it worked before. So this is why I would be more cautious. Otherwise, I would be happy to have this by default. It's just I didn't want to break.
Good you brought it up. I want to kind of have a discussion and trying to find a way to have as seamless behavior as possible, because I think ideally, like, users should not even think about it. So if we only have that behavior with that flag, then I suspect that no one is going to use it until they hit this issue, and then they're going to put that flag and they will keep it forever. It's like because it's kind of a one-off thing, but you want. Yeah, so maybe another option could be we could try to run, during the sync process, we can run a validation, and in case of error, double check the local validation, and if local validation passing, then basically you are upgrading because it's like a clear indication that if you have a CR and CR, sorry, if you have a sync operation and then you have CR and CRD, and then CR validation passed in the server, but failed in the server, but passed locally, and you're going to change CRD, it seems to be a good enough, safe enough to rely on local validation in this case.
Yeah, the problem is where we do the validation is way before the actual validation is done right now. So we do this at the very beginning where we collect resources, and it's done at that stage, not where the actual validation happens right now.
I think, maybe this, but like in general, I think I want to kind of, at least I will try to now look one more time, and then I want to take a look at implementation and continue the discussion in CR. But basically, I feel like, at least for me now, code review would be much easier, and I will try to find a way to make this possible and suggest the code changes in CI. Because at least I'm kind of like
Yeah.
90% convinced that this is like, or 100% convinced this feature is needed. I just want to find a way to avoid asking people to put that flag. At least, okay, and there is one workaround. Basically, Argo CD supports sync, and you during the sync you can disable validation. You can just say don't validate anything. Yeah.
We realized that we just don't want to disable validation because it would be the same. We would put that validation force annotation there, and we would forget it. So this is why we don't want to skip validation. Or we would have to skip validation for the entire application, but we don't want that either. So, and as you can see, this is right where you do the automatic validation skipping right now. So if you have the CRD in the sync, you check for it, and you have the annotation.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I forgot.
Yeah. So this is when collected.
So basically, it's in line with existing another annotation. So this I forgot we have this, but
yeah.
Unless I'm wrong, it says that if you get not found error and annotation that says it's okay, as long as the same.
So in the not found case, this is automatically done, because if we have the CRD in the sync, then we disable dry run. But on the other branch of this, where we have the resource already, and we have the CRD here, then we can do validation. And I try to do the same, so I try to skip dry run the same way. So that would work very similarly to how you already did this option with skipping random missing resource.
Thank you. I think it should, based on current schedule, it should go into 1.8. And yeah.
Yeah. So I'm happy to make any changes if you need it. We can continue the discussion under the PR.
Anyone else has opinion about this feature?
Sorry?
I'm asking if anyone else has opinion about the feature request. So yeah, if you do, let us know.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, so we can move on. And yeah, we had one more topic, the CLI testing strategy and getting output.
Oh, sorry.
For the smoke test. Yeah.
I think my microphone was muted when I was talking.
Oh.
Just coming back to the feature. So I just wanted to say, actually, I think it's really useful, and probably it also we could get rid of the one annotation, right, of the skip dry run on missing resources, because basically we wouldn't have to skip the dry run, right? Because we have a CRD locally to validate.
Oh yeah, actually it's a better, yes.
Yeah, if it works as expected, then yes.
So I think what you suggested, Alex, maybe to first validate against the cluster, and if that fails, validate against locally. It's actually a good idea.
Yeah, so I think Peter was pointing out that it's kind of hard to do technically just because of how code is written, and I was hoping to find a way to do it in in the during peer review. But I also, one more kind of motivation to avoid having annotations is because there are a lot of off-the-shelf Helm charts, and people don't have control on what's in the chart, so they won't be able to add validation. But same thing might happen. So if we find a way to get safe validation without annotations, it would be the best.
But awesome! It's very, very awesome work, Peter.
Okay, so we can talk about the next one. I think Devon wanted to talk about how to implement testing. And
thanks, Alex. Yeah, first time Argo CD contributor, so I wanted to get some context and the design approach on this. So the task says that automated test that mimics user behavior for UI and CLI. So Keith Chong, he's taking care of the UI piece, and I'm taking on the CLI piece. And I wrote some assumptions in as a comment, and I wanted to validate with the team if those assumptions are true. So when I'm doing the CLI testing, am I assuming that there is already connected to a Kubernetes cluster, Argo CD is installed, all the required dependencies are there, and I added some pseudocodes as well. So basically I'm doing an app create, and based on the app create, the next list would show me the app was actually created. That's a very basic task, but then I could also see if there's certain number of pods that would be created based on, let's say, Argo CD app create, and I could do a check on that as well. And I wanted to, so the other thing is I found this particular test. I'll paste the link in the chat. So that's something I also wanted to check if I'm expected to do something like that with the Go code, where the commands are run within like a Go code rather than having a shell script. So these are some of the things I wanted to check with the team.
Yeah, and I think I can give some context about why we created the ticket. It was in response to all the bugs we found in 1.7 release. So right now we kind of rely a lot on early adopters, and so that we run Argo CD into it, and we just have several dog food clusters, and the dog food clusters allow us to test controller really well even before we release anything. And what was missing is we don't have an easy way to test user interface, because even if we release kind of pre-release of Argo CD to internal dog food cluster, we don't have enough of people clicking buttons. So yeah, and that kind of answers, basically we needed some test that we can run against existing cluster. Yeah, so, and then basically it's fair assumption to say that Argo CD is up and running, and the script already, it gets all the information about Argo CD from outside. Basically it should be given URL and then access key and all of that. I think that answers the first question.
Yeah, that answers the first question. And the second question would be like, what would be the right way to validate the command?
It's like basically you're trying to choose between Bash and Golang, right?
Yeah, that would be the other question. Yeah.
I feel like okay, I did not. I have not tried to, do it myself yet, but I just a suggestion. So we recently saw another team, and they tried to automate. They needed to automate CLI, and team also uses. So they needed to write an E2E testing, and team uses Golang, but they had to use basically kubectl, so they needed to test Kubernetes, and they ended up using Cucumber framework. So they created a wrapper. So if I'm not sure if you heard about Cucumber, but idea that you have a framework, and that framework can parse basically text files, and you can write some Go code, and you can say, if the text happens to be in the text file, that means this Go function. So basically, it's like a combination of two things. So the user still can write, tests just on the text, and we can keep using Golang. So I think that seems to me the best possible outcome if we get a framework which still leverages Golang, and we can reuse a lot of functions from our test infrastructure. Yeah, so that's, but okay, I don't really answer your question, but the idea that it's like open-ended, whatever works the best.
So
yeah.
What you mentioned is different from the link I gave, right? Like the cluster test.go.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is it's our internal E2E test, and it will be impossible to just reuse it.
Yeah.
Because it tightly coupled with where is that guy? So basically, just to start the test, you have to use a fixture, and the fixture, so methods from this package, they assume they talk to the test cluster, and they might just and they are expecting to get Argo CD-E2E namespace in that cluster, and they will even kill everything in that namespace.
Yeah.
So this code is unsafe to run against any Kubernetes cluster. Yeah, but there are still a lot of useful Golang methods which will help you for sure. For example, run CLI. So yeah.
And for the Cucumber path you mentioned, is there an example or something that I could look at to understand how to do that work?
I can. Okay, well, can I get it offline?
Sure, you can comment later, whichever works for you. And the last question I had was, rather than just the basic validation of Argo CD app list, if the app was created, can I do some in-depth testing, like maybe create some pods or someone I could reach out to know that answer? It doesn't have to be in this call, but just to understand what level of validation I'm expected to.
I know that in practice it would be hard to assume access to Kubernetes cluster and Argo CD. I feel like just interaction with Argo CD is enough. Like if you, because Argo CD, it also can give you information about. Imagine if you expect pods, you can just use Argo CD CLI to get all the resources of the application and check if pod is inside. So yeah, that's. I try to avoid. Yeah.
So Alex, Devan, I have a question here. Yeah, suppose I want to, like Devan said that, okay, so little bit of in-depth validation in it, and suppose we need some in-depth validation indeed. So for that, can we import some packages like where we can use that to do the in-depth validation of like pod status and whatever we have?
Sorry, your voice was breaking. Can you repeat the last sentence one time?
Yeah. Okay. So can we like import any third-party packages here in Argo CD so that we can do a little bit of in-depth validation, like pod status and maybe which will be applicable here?
I feel like it's totally fine to import third-party packages, but I was saying that just because of how we're going to use that test, it will be difficult to give the cluster access to the test. So it won't have kubeconfig to talk to the cluster. Yeah, because it's just giving more. So yeah, it's like basically we will try to use that run the test against kind of production cluster. So it should be that we need a guard which will be basically Argo CD API. So it should be read-only, not read-only. It should be test, but that make changes in Argo CD, but most likely we will have to configure Argo CD and then create a test project with limited permissions, and that test project, the test Argo CD project, and that project will be configured so test won't make any harm, and it won't be safe to give access to that cluster. So yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that tests should only talk to Argo CD API, not the Kubernetes API.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
thanks, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And I'm so I almost want to take back my suggestion about Cucumber. It seems to me maybe that Cucumber is like a next step, but maybe the best possible way is to just reuse Golang framework, which we have. But to reuse it, we cannot use code. We cannot run tests in that folder E2E, because it's just all the tests are implemented in a way that code inside of that folder assume that we have access to test cluster, and they try to do too much. They clean up very aggressively. Yeah, but maybe the best possible way would be to create a smoke test inside of test.
Yeah.
And then just reuse whatever needed from existing functions.
And Alex, I can see that here from the code, like you like testifies the framework is being used here, and yeah. So I can see the package here. So testify is one package, and testify is a test framework. Yeah. So here
we import a lot of third-party stuff already, so it's totally fine to. So basically, if you need to add more, it's okay to add more packages.
So to understand,
high chance it's.
Yeah. So smoke, let's say smoke test folder under test, but not E2E. And within that, whichever third-party package we need, similar to testify or anything that runs a shell command and that or CLI command, that would be Argo CD command. So whatever validation we do, we use the Argo CD API and validate.
Right? I think that's right. And I would suggest to consider kind of steal something from E2E and maybe move it into test common, and then use in both E2E and then smoke test. Because so E2E has some dangerous stuff, but it also has some like harmless stuff like run CLI, for example.
Yeah.
Yes. So if we move it into common, then.
Okay. And just to make sure that I'm not copying any cluster setup steps, because I'm assuming that whoever calls my script, they already have the connected to the cluster and Argo CD installed. So I don't need to do that plumbing.
Yes. Okay. And I think we can assume kind of safely that this test can do whatever it needs to do with Argo CD, using Argo CD API, because we will need to configure it so it has limited access to Argo CD. So for example, it can delete applications safely. If you need to prepare a safe state, then kind of it's okay to delete applications and recreate them. Yeah. Because Argo CD lets us configure access properly. So I think we're going to create a service account, and that service account won't even have access to make any dangerous actions.
Thank you.
And Alex, I have a question, like the first question, like Keith is working on that, but still I have a doubt on that. Like, I want to know if we are doing the UI testing, now how it's going to be executed in the CI. So are we providing some kind of UI interface while running CI?
I was thinking, I feel like we can run headless Chrome, and I know that I did it myself before. It's like, it doesn't, basically, as long as you can run a container, you're good. So we can run a Selenium grid, sorry, not Selenium grid, basically a Selenium server, and it has access to a headless Chrome. And then you can just use Selenium API to talk to that Selenium server, and it will interact with Chrome for us.
Yeah, got it. I was thinking about, I thought I was going in a different direction. Like, we need at least a UI things to see all the changes, what is happening. Okay, yeah, through headless, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, got it. Thanks, Alex. Yeah.
And like, to be honest, right now, we kind of rely completely on GitHub Actions. So whatever GitHub Actions provide, we're trying to stick to it. I think in worst case, we also have a Kubernetes cluster which can run a little more heavier things. It will be harder to manage, but it's also a possibility. I would try to use, just stick to GitHub Actions as much as possible because it's simplest for us to manage. But if we need, so we have resources for the worst case.
Yep. Thanks, Alex. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, does it? It answered all the questions there.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
Thanks again, Alex. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Oh, we had a topic from Jan about developer documentation.
Yeah. So basically, this emerged from several questions on Slack or conversations I recently had on Slack, and with all the new contributors now coming up, and everyone faces basically similar questions, how to do stuff and where to find stuff, and like how do I change API and what do I have to change for that. And I feel we have a place currently for contributor documentation that lives in Git, right? But I think that Git might not be the right place for such kind of fast changing, maybe short living documentation. And I just wanted to put in the discussion because the GitHub repository, it provides like a wiki. It was used some ages ago. I seen the couple of documents in it. And yeah, I just wanted to put up for discussion whether we want to push all this non-user facing documentation into the wiki maybe. So it can be easily edited and updated without having to create a new branch in your local copy, create a PR, have someone review and approve it and stuff like that. And I think the wiki, it would at least provide us with a revision history, right? Who changed what. So yeah, this is basically a discussion topic. Like, what do others think of it?
Yeah, I think it really depends on basically the team, right? Whatever team thinks the most convenient. I agree. It is, the easier it is to change developer documentation, the better, because we don't, at least like, we don't want to run for E2E tests to make a change in, docs.
So I think it's good to have the user-facing docs somewhere in the Git because we generate the site from it and stuff like that. Yeah, but for so things like developer how-tos, let's call it like that. So maybe someone submitted documentation that contains a typo in a path or something like that, and to fix this, it's quite exhausting, right? If you have to create a PR and
how about, let's say we use a wiki, like we need to give access to everyone. Do you know already, Jan, how easy it is to, like, who can access the wiki?
I think it's the members of Argo project GitHub team. I think. And then I don't know if it's possible to further restrict it down, or if it's even required to further restrict it down.
Yeah, that was my next question. Like, what do you think the best? Let's say everyone already who's here in the meeting is a member, and they have access. It seems to me that it's perfectly fine to just let everyone, give everyone right permission because we, trust every member, and it's safe to make a mistake because we can always revert.
Right.
I'm thinking
so
this. Yeah.
yeah, I think that there will be lots of mistakes in the documentation. It's in the nature of things, yeah, right? But it's also much easier to get it fixed.
Yeah.
What if we set up a separate repo for these docs, but it doesn't require peer review? What do you think?
That seems like a good idea. It's Mitch here from Red Hat. It might be simpler, right? And then if at some point the docs start stabilizing, we could always bring that into to be part of the repo. But it allows that kind of a iterative inputs.
Right.
I mean, I like that idea.
Yeah, but I totally like Jan's suggestion here. I think we should make it easier for people to update documentation. Something like a wiki would be great. I can also look to see if CNCF provides any this kind of service that we might be able to use. But lacking that, we could set up a document repo and just let anyone who's maybe an org level member to update it, or even anyone else. I mean, if there's no problem, there's no harm in letting other people, but there could be some noise, I suppose.
Yeah,
I think the wiki itself is like a hidden repo. You can even close it. Wiki is a repo. You can clone it. You can make changes. So I don't see a big difference.
GitHub Wiki, right? GitHub Wiki feature.
Yeah, GitHub. I think Jan, you talked about GitHub, right?
Yes, right. So
Right.
it's a GitHub feature, yeah.
Yeah.
The only problem.
Is it easy
the only
to
problem,
edit? Sorry, go ahead.
The thing about wikis is that it is easier for contributors to edit because they don't have to put up a pull request. But if you're not a contributor, you can't edit it at all. Whereas with the current documentation, like myself, not a contributor, can put up a pull request. I didn't know you could do this, but Dewan just posted in the chat that you can remove that check so anyone can edit it, but then anyone can edit it. So it's either collaborators only or everyone. I think that your idea for making an org scoped repository would be the right balance of in between.
Yeah, so then that means that any say org member could commit the change, but someone who's not an org member could send a PR. And
I might be wrong, but I feel like so we had to go through the procedure of, we had to figure out who a member, which responsibilities member has, but it's done already. And I guess next step is to pretty much add everyone, at least from Red Hat team, who actively contribute as members. Is it correct? I think Ed, you can answer.
Yeah, so the org membership here should be, I think Jesse just recently updated the member rules. Yes. But the intent is that if you are an active community member, it should be very easy to become an org level member. It doesn't give you commit privileges.
Yes, but at least if we know, if everyone here is a member, and we can configure, give member permission to edit wiki, this, this,
exactly.
It makes it easier.
Yeah, wiki or the repo. But I think the comment was that if you're not an org member, a repo makes it easier than the PR. So.
Yeah, I agree. So this is for someone, who is just joined, and we want him to.
Okay.
So
let's consider this option. I think we should make it easier for community everyone to update and contribute to the documentation.
Okay. And yeah, do you want to make a first step? Do you want to? I think you have access to. You can create a new repo. Or if not, yes.
No, yeah. I can't create a new repo.
Okay, I can create a repo to experiment with and see how it works.
All right. Yeah, sounds fine.
Okay.
And yeah, if it's if we are going to try it, I'd step forward and set up a general structure maybe for the new wiki. And
okay, yeah, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and are we talking about two separate repos where one would be the developer facing documentation and one would be the user docs? One of the link I pasted project, it says like the documentation is out of date and will be updated later. Is that the developer doc or the user doc?
You're right. Yes, definitely. It's a. I think it's a good, good example of such documentation that has to be updated.
But Devon, the link you posted, read the docs. I think Alex and me, we have discussed in the past that this could be an option for user-facing documentation, actually, right? So because it features versions and stuff like that, but yeah, probably we can discuss it the next meeting. Maybe I can put it on the agenda.
Yeah, sounds good.
Because we only have 10 minutes left, so I think this might be a longer discussion, maybe.
I had a question. I see that we have Alex Collins in the meeting. Alex, do you think it would be, so if we're going to create a repo, do you think Argo workflows, developer documentation, would you be interested to put it into the same repo and try the process? Or in Argo workflows, you don't have this problem?
So both workflows and events have a docs directory that contains an MK docs generated websites.
Mm-hmm.
How that published is in a way a kind of a technical detail.
Mm-hmm.
What's important is that, the quality of the content and its accessibility, discoverability, searchability. The big issue we had on Argo CD and the big issue we have on especially on workflows today is there are a lot of questions that have been answered out there, but people can't find their way to those answers in the documentation. So more of our effort is really focused on making sure the documentation is up to date and correct.
Oh, and I feel like my question was about pretty much just the dev documentation, like internal document.
Oh, like content
kind of, yes. And what we're thinking is that because it's so difficult to change it now in the main repo, you have to, at least you have to wait for like 20-minute long pull request. The proposal is to move it into a separate repository where you can make changes much easier, even without even PR. Basically, just have a knowledge base in that repo. And I ask, yeah.
What about using the GitHub wiki page?
It's also, we're going to consider that too. It's like either wiki or, and if we ended up using the Git repository, we have to give it a name, and we have to either name it Argo CD Dev or Argo Dev. What do you think? So if we
I would just call it, but I would stick it to Argo CD Dev.
So, okay, so you're saying basically if you decide, there is a chance you will have your own docs repo. Okay.
Yeah, I think we would do it ourselves if we did it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than coupling anything like releases and publishing and styles and so forth together, it's better to keep them separate. We can always merge them together in the future.
Right.
Okay.
So Alex, you're saying that you would continue to use Argo CD for developer official project doc, but you would use the community contribution docs repo for community contributed docs.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like we have quite the same kind of problems that Argo CD has for users. We don't tend to get many people saying they can't run make start and do the contributions. I mean, people have trouble with the code generation because Golang code generation is pretty flaky set of scripts at the end of the day, isn't it? Painful to manage dependencies. But if people want to run the system up and install it, they just check the code out and make start, and they can start making their code changes at that point. I don't really know why we don't have those issues, but we don't really seem to have them.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so it seems like we have a couple topics for next week. And was there a question?
Sorry, I was having a quick question about FAQs. Would that be the regular doc or developer doc? Because on the Slack, I see a lot of people asking like the same question and it gets lost. And maybe in order to be more efficient, if there was a way for us to include an FAQ of commonly asked questions, and every time someone asks a question, we could keep referring to that until a point where most common questions, people just start referring to that, and what the ideal place for that?
There was a suggestion there
Mhm.
that maybe we should start using Stack Overflow for something like that. What do other people feel?
Yeah, it's an open kind of issue, and I think like we were supposed to do something for that, but just we didn't have time. One idea was I just recently found a repo where I tried to create an issue, and then issue had some pre-filled text, which basically encouraged me. It gives me a link to Stack Overflow, and I was thinking to propose to do the same. You know, just provide a link to Stack Overflow, which already includes Argo CD tag, and then yeah. So this is answer to your question. Like this is one idea to kind of just discourage people from creating issues that is a question and tell them, please go to Stack Overflow and apply this tag.
Right. Yeah. So I think that is a good idea. Only question is on Stack Overflow, you do need to get a certain reputation rank to be able to use it. So I don't know if most people in the Argo community can actually effectively use Stack Overflow.
I know that answers are encouraged from like any kind of reputation. This is how you get reputation. So you can answer. Yeah. I know that you need to get a reputation to vote or downvote. But as long as you answer like 5-10 questions, then you can even do pretty much everything.
Okay. Is anyone interested in maybe doing a little bit of research to see if Stack Overflow would be the right thing for us?
I can give you guys a bit of feedback on our experience of this. It's early days. We've only been pushing, encouraging users to ask their questions on Stack Overflow by installing a config.yaml file, which changes the options that people are given when they go to create an issue. So when you go to create an issue, we previously had make a enhancement issue, make a bug issue, or make a question issue. And the question one now is actually instead it's changed to be a link to Stack Overflow. So that's that technical change. I mean, that's meant to drive behavioral change. And we do see, I think it's pretty reasonable to say we see fewer questions asked via GitHub, but we haven't seen the same volume of questions being asked on Stack Overflow, I don't think. I think actually people are asking them there, and are asking more of them, but it's not, not the 2 or 3 questions we used to get every single day. It seems like people are now asking those questions in Slack, to me. That's what their behavior change has become. So we've kind of driven people out of GitHub into Slack. Maybe not driven, use a different word to driven. Encouraged.
Yeah, probably it's a little bit it's a small hurdle, because I think you need to sign up for Stack Overflow as well, right? And I don't know, do they have a single sign-on with GitHub? Because I think it might be a small hurdle, but talking for myself, I don't have a Stack Overflow account personally, so.
Maybe, and often those single sign-ons don't work very well. We had a problem in our community meeting yesterday where one of the presenters couldn't get in because he couldn't sign on with single sign-on because he incorrectly entered his date of birth as being under 16 years old, and the error message he got gave him no information about the fact that he'd entered his date of birth incorrectly by accident, and spent 20 minutes bashing his head against Zoom's single sign-on unsuccessfully. So it can completely prevent a small proportion of people engaging in the software application if you require some kind of sign-on to it. But I mean,
it does support GitHub SSL.
Maybe another thought is that I feel like people who ask questions, they're eager to get answer as soon as possible. And then in Slack, you have like a live people around, and they're just hoping, someone quicker respond than Stack Overflow.
I think Slack might be a better option than Stack Overflow for many people, but it's certainly a better option than having lots of issues open in GitHub that kind of consume developer bandwidth. But you kind of, the downside is you lose the documentation for their solution.
You can also search in Slack. I don't know if anyone uses it.
In Slack, unfortunately, like it limits. It basically lets you search on the top 10,000 messages, which is around 6 weeks, of time right now in Argo Project channel, and it's 10,000 messages across all Argo projects.
Yeah, this is starting to make me think we should actually not use Stack Overflow at all. I mean, like, it's still, you've only done it for a couple of weeks. I'll chat with our team, the rest of the team today, and see what they think.
Okay, I don't know what others think, but I still feel like I want to try Stack Overflow, but to make it successful, I feel like, we needed several people who can subscribe to questions and then answer them just to start it kind of rolling, so people feel that yes, Stack Overflow is working, and then keep asking questions in Stack Overflow. Because if we just redirect people to Stack Overflow and then no one answers, yeah, so it won't work.
And yeah, we already have a tag.
Yes, there is a tag already. Someone created. It's for all Argo projects.
Gagan just said that Stack Overflow allows GitHub login. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, and tag exists. Oh, even Argo CD tag exists. Oh, I didn't know. And there are questions.
I also noticed that CNCF does provide a discourse for community discussions. I don't know if that is any better for them, but it's an option we have available.
Yeah, but from my point of view, I think we should avoid too much channels, because it will be a maintenance hell, right? So, but yeah, it's something I think we should discuss maybe even further and need to make a decision on it. So, about the official support channels.
Yeah, and
I mean, we could also use a Git repo for facts if we like.
I just posted that I had already created issue to discuss migration, or not migration, to start using Stack Overflow. I pasted link into the chat. Okay, and that was last topic, and we just ran out of time. It's 11, or it is okay. My 11 a.m. Not sure what time is it in your time zone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for hosting, Alex.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.